Good evening, one and all. Thank you for joining us on what is Pancake Day. So don't flip out. This match preview is already on the roll with some puns. But we're early this week because I have to work late on Wednesday. But you don't hear more of that. But joining me in this week's then, and actually triple busy this week. You've had a week off, but suddenly it's 3 podcasts in the space of 3 days. Ben, host of the Total Saints podcast. Good to see you again.
Yeah, how you doing, Freddie? Keeping well? I got to say those puns were. I know there was only a couple in there, but it wasn't a great start.
Well, like it is with an omelette, you can't make an omelette without cracking a few eggs.
Good, but yeah, otherwise keeping well. I think, as we always tend to say, don't we? Much better. World is much better place when Saints win. So, yeah.
Absolutely, and we're smiling from ear to ear because it was a victory at the weekend. But I guess before we sink our teeth into that, send us your best pancake puns in the comments. I've been speaking to Jan Bednarek recently. I've not heard much from James Beattie, but I hear that Brego Ormerod is the best pancake out there.
I'll give you the first two. The third one's a struggle.
You can tell me yours in a minute. It's Aston Villa based. I like it, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
Right, let's get to it then. Aston Villa. Say hello in the comments if you're there. Good to see you. A few of you already joining us. Leo, good evening to you. And hello to Charlie. We're doing well. Thank you for joining us. Right, let's get into Aston Villa then. Saints 2. Aston Villa 0 at the weekend. A clean sheet and a victory at home. We're off the bottom of the table in the home form. But let's start with the starting lineup, though, Ben. Ward-Prowse was tasked at right back once again, and he's kept Zaha quiet earlier on the season, tasked with the same thing to do against Grealish. And Will Smallbone in the middle of midfield. I thought it was a composed and professional performance by the young lad.
Yeah, I mean, starting with Prowsey, Freddie, I said on our pod at the weekend, I was maybe a little frustrated to see him revert to right back because we know the energy and sort of, real sort of performances he's been given in the middle of the pitch for us. So, that was maybe the positives you get by him going to right back are obviously the negatives you lose from him in midfield. But you hit the nail on the head. I mean, he did a great job against Zaha a few weeks ago, stopped him. Alongside Stuart Armstrong, they did a great job of keeping Grealish quiet on Saturday. And yeah, I mean, Smallbone was a very composed performance, wasn't it, for 18 minutes? He'll get a lot of confidence from that. And, one of the things I think we sort of spoke about, and it'd be interesting to get the views of the guys out there listening, is that potentially Ralph went with Smallbone because he likes him as a more attacking option. He said he likes him because he doesn't take many touches. He gets rid of the ball quickly. Romeo, we know, is a lot more defensive. And would that maybe have given the initiative to Villa to come on to us? So, he's only 20 years old. He's a young lad. We need to be careful about building him up into something that he's not yet. But a really good performance from him. And, ultimately the 3 points.
Yeah, and I think perhaps it would have been a sink or swim sort of moment had he been introduced against Burnley last weekend. But Aston Villa, they were crap the weekend.
They were crap, yes.
But you were talking about sort of coming on with Will Smallbone, but there was no bone of contention about Shane Long's goal. I finished the sentence, and for you in the comments too, finish the sentence. Shane Long scores with his
6-pack, Freddie, wasn't it?
I think the commentators were a little diplomatic about that comment.
Yeah, they were. I've been trying to work out what the sort of, this day and age, we never quite know, do you? But I've been trying to work out what are offensive and aren't offensive words. So I nearly put schlong on our tweet that went out with the pod on Monday, and I decided maybe that was a bit controversial. So I just went with bits in the end. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely that part of his body, wasn't it?
Well, he didn't balls it up. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Is it?
It was an early goal though. 7 minutes in, his second of the season. We've got some comments here. Hello, Samuel's jumping in with some more pancake puns.
Oh, good, good.
We really battered Aston Villa at the weekend.
Like
great,
so nice that's better than any of yours, Freddie.
Leo adds that he scored with his knee. Okay, we'll keep it clean then, Leo. Nice one. But it was an early goal, and it was just what we needed, I think. To settle the nerves, and take the game to Aston Villa. We were controlled from the early minutes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, how many times have we seen it with Saints where they do tend to start games quite well? Burnley aside, they will come out and give it a good 5 or 10 minutes, get in the faces of teams, and then they go 1-0 down, don't they? Historically, that's what they always do. The first chance the opposition have, they score a goal. So it was nice to get that goal. We probably should have been 3 or 4 up by half time. In typical Saints manner, we managed to miss some good chances. So, however it went in, at least it went in. I think it probably calmed everyone down on the playing side, and I think helped build the atmosphere within St Mary's, didn't it? I think I wasn't able to be at the game this weekend, but you could just hear it and listen, the crowd, the noise they were making getting behind the team, just as Ralph had asked, and that's what we need. And I think ultimately it gave the confidence to the lads to sort of push on and try and get that second goal, which I'm sure we'll come to, came a lot longer than it should have done.
Yeah, we couldn't quite knock one out though. Sooner rather than later, it did come in the end though. Gineppo, with all the hard work, appearing to chase the lost ball for the setup for Shane Long's goal. He hooks it back, slips it in on the near post, and we were sort of fearing the worst from Gineppo. Really, he put all that hard work in to set up the goal. And he went down with a head injury. Perhaps the bandage actually gave him a bit of an extra bounce for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I like it. Mr. Men analogy. Very good. It's good, isn't it? That now Cedric Suarez has gone. At least we've got someone that's sort of been able to pick up the headband in his absence, really. But yeah, I mean, you're right. We didn't have Redmond. Boufal obviously wasn't fully fit. We needed Musa Gineppo to stand up and, be a real impactful performance from him. And I gave him man of the match. I thought he was one of a number of outfield players, probably all of them, that could have been a case for man of the match. They put in real, good 7, 8, 9 out of 10 performances. But he's got something about him, hasn't he? He's got that flair. He's got that unpredictability almost, and you never quite know what's going to happen with him. But it was a good goal from his point of view because he didn't give up on it. The defender kind of switched off, and by the time he'd switched on again, Gineppo was round and flicking it in. So a really good 90 minutes from him. I thought a really good performance from him, I should say. I thought he really added a lot of quality on that left wing.
And it was a difficult afternoon against Burnley for all of his anonymity. Aston Villa had no idea how to deal with Gineppo at the weekend, running out defenders. Typically, as you say, sort of a unpredictability. I put it on my notes with his erratic endeavour. How about that?
Like it, yeah, that's good. I think the thing with Burnley, they got Phil Bardsley at right back, very experienced Premier League defender. He knows how to play against any type of winger. He would have played against probably the likes of Ronaldo during his career and things like that. So he knows how to stop players getting in behind him. I think the Aston Villa back fullback Gilbert. Probably not the same quality of player. I think he looked a bit like rabbit in headlights, didn't he, against Gineppo? So it played into our hands, and as I say, hopefully that'll give him some confidence as well, because he's been a bit up and down this season. We know he's had a few niggles. We know he flies backwards and forwards to Mali, doesn't he? He does a lot of air miles and everything. So you hope that he's going to get a chance now, probably again at the weekend, which we'll come on to talk about, to really sort of now try to put a run of fixtures together where he's performing well.
Yeah, and it's important that either Boufal or Gineppo had to step up, perhaps put a stamp for their authority on that left-hand side in Redmond's replacement. We know he's up to sort of a month or two out. Hopefully he does come back before the end of the season. Important player, but if Gineppo can keep his consistency, because he's come in and out of games recently, scored some wonderful goals in the first quarter of the season, goals at Sheffield United and Brighton. Hopefully he can sort of replicate a bit of that form going into the run-in.
Yeah, we nicknamed him the Mali and Messi earlier in the season, didn't we? He's been a little bit off colour since, but yeah, I mean, one door opens, another shuts, doesn't it? I think you never want to see players get injured, but ultimately, I guess as a footballer, if you're not in the team, that's probably how you're going to get your opportunity, by someone being out injured. It's frustrating because Redmond's obviously come back into form the last 4 to 6 weeks, coinciding probably with the team as well, but he had a brilliant performance up at Spurs, of course, in the FA Cup game. So it's a shame to see him out because he was doing well, but as I say, hopefully that'll be a chance now for Gineppo to get a run of maybe 3, 4, 5 games before he comes back towards the end of the season. That's what we want, isn't it, within Saints? We want players competing for those shirts. We don't want what we had 12, 18 months ago, which was 11 players that were playing week in, week out and no one else really competing for them. So, now it's going to be down to Redmond to get back in the team if Gineppo starts playing well.
Yeah, and that's sort of Ralph's, I guess, philosophy. Really gives everybody a chance. When perhaps one player is injured, the replacement, then gets a good run and team, and then it's no given that the original sort of first teamer will replace them or go immediately back into the side. Right, let's go to some of our comments. In fact, Bailey has asked about Smallbone's start against West Ham. We'll get to West Ham just shortly. We will answer that question, Bailey. Samuel adds, a bit silly to sell Target. He looked decent when partnered with Grealish, and to be fair, actually, both of them had a quiet afternoon at the weekend.
Yeah, I think probably it's less so maybe about Saturday's game and more across the course of the season. We've lost Bertrand for a little bit of the season, and maybe at that point we thought, should we have sold Target? Ralph was adamant, wasn't he, that it was a good deal for the club, and I'm sure fullback positions will be somewhere that we'll be looking to strengthen this summer. We bought in Walker Peters now. He's played at left back before, so we do have sort of 3 players for 2 positions now, if that makes sense in terms of Valerie, Walker Peters, and Bertrand. So it'd be interesting to see, but. Target was a Saints lad, wasn't he? He was a Saints fan. I think that was the one thing we liked about him. But £17 million in this day and age wasn't a bad deal. I think it's like anything, isn't it? When it's going well, you don't worry about him. When it's going badly, you sort of worry about it. So I think we just have to say it was probably a good deal and move on.
And actually, good to see him back a couple of weeks ago in the sort of winter break. He came down to see his brother or his family. Came to see Sholing, one of the local teams down here. So good to see he's still staying true to his roots, sort of thing, and coming back when he can. Lots of comments flying in actually about Shane Long. Now we've sort of briefly touched on him just at the top of the show. Piers is asking about Long's performance. So is Dan, and Dan sort of added that Long is so underrated for the team for what he does. I mean, it goes against any striker's DNA to be so selfless. Shane Long does all the dirty work, gets in amongst it, holds up the play, and then finally releases the load onto his teammate.
Totally. And I'm in the middle of reading Peter Crouch's latest book, How to Be a Footballer 2, at the moment, Freddie. And he talks about the fact that he wasn't a very good runner as a striker. He didn't put the nasty sort of yards in. And he actually refers to Shane Long in his book and says that, he's someone that runs into the corners. He puts in the graft for the team. For me, I've always commented on him as a sort of modern day Brett Ormerod. He runs around a lot. He really puts the effort in, but he doesn't score as many goals as he should. And, I think he's almost Marmite, isn't he, Shane Long, with fans? They either love him or hate him. And I think for me, he's someone that absolutely deserves a new contract. And I think if he left, we'd quickly realise a bit, unlike Matt Target, we'd probably miss him very much because of the work he does, the amount of flick-ons he wins, the amount of fouls he wins. It terrorises defenders. I'm sure when they see his number come up to go off and get substituted, they breathe a sigh of sort of relief. So I totally agree with that comment. For me, he's an underrated player. I think, what he offers the team and, I guess going forward, I know he's getting on a bit in age, but he's still very, very quick. And for the next couple of years, I think he can absolutely add something to that squad.
Yeah, right. Good evening to Bartlett. Hello in the comments. Lots of comments flying in. Samuel adds he's got heart and passion, really respects his hard work. Tom added earlier that he gives 100%, completely overrated and underrated, I should say. And complements Ings perfectly. Right, let's get back to our chances then against Aston Villa. It could have been 3 or 4 at half-time had it not been for Pepe Reina.
Yeah, it could have been, or Crepe Reina, as I've been renaming him from a pancake point of view. But it was funny, wasn't it? Because Villa kind of caused their own problems, really, by sort of Mings and Reina trying to flick the ball out and pass it here, there, and everywhere. And they kept putting themselves under pressure because the likes of Højbjerg and those guys were really... I guess, reading the plays so much, they were almost one step ahead of the Villa players. And I think a lot of the chances that Saints got came from those mistakes. But it's, maybe another team on another day would have punished us a little bit more, for not taking those chances. So I think we have to sort of take the rough and the smooth. But yeah, ultimately, Pepe Reina kept them in the first half. And at 1-0, I think as Saints fans, you always sort of fear the worst, don't you? That they're going to come out and get one chance and equalise. But they were never really in the game. It was a very comfortable 2-0 in the end. And I think there won't be many people that you look at the stats, Freddie. What was it? 28 shots to 4. And I think 3 of those 4 shots were blocked. They didn't even go on or off target. So effectively it was 28 shots to 1. And really that's pretty one-sided for any football match.
Yeah, we just hope Saints are more clinical in front of goal, and perhaps that's what our problem has been for most of this season. All of these chances, we're playing attractive football, getting up high into the pitch, pressing defenders into mistakes. But sometimes it goes for us. The fact that Aston Villa rarely threatened, we've got away with not being clinical last weekend, but others we got punished with, such as Burnley last weekend.
Yeah, and actually for that sort of run between the start of December and maybe the end of January, we were pretty clinical. That was the weird thing for Saints. They get 3 or 4 chances and score 2 or 3 of them. So it's historically we all know that they're the sort of team that will have 15 shots at goal and they'll score 1 goal because that's just the way that we like to do things as Southampton Football Club. Unfortunately, we never make it easy for ourselves. But yeah, the likes of Ings. again, he had a couple of good chances the weekend. Gineppo blazed that one over the crossbar. I mean, I
Mm.
know Steve said on our pod, if we'd taken our chances, it could have been a 6, 7, 8, 9-0. So it's at this time of the season, it's about the 3 points, isn't it? Whether it's 1-0, 5-0, whatever, that's the most important thing. But
Mm.
I think we have to be aware that Villa were pretty poor, and on another day, we might have been under a little bit more challenge than that.
Do Mali have a rugby team? Because that chance from Gineppo would have been straight for the posts on the Six Nations,
If they don't, then he's certainly going to be someone they're going to be looking at. Yeah.
But it was the big finish we were all desperate for against Aston Villa. McCarthy, showed some composure and actually some responsibility in that box as the ball came over for the corner. Pepe Reina's up in the 6-yard area, who makes no effort at all to get back at 37 years old. I don't blame him, to be fair. But it gets to Adams, sort of left-hand side, who's smart enough to hold up the ball. Great little play here. Swivels, turns the defender away and just finds was it a lung-busting Stuart Armstrong trying to get on the other end of the pitch, and it was the climax we were all waiting for, right?
I think there's nothing better than a last-minute goal like that, really, is there? Despite all of the sort of trauma you go through before that. But just to sort of reflect on your comments, Freddie. Firstly, totally agree. I mean, I think many of us have been quite sort of negative towards Alex McCarthy commanding his box. He's a great shot stopper and he does a good job back there. He's certainly, for me, our most consistent at the two goalkeepers. But 94th minute, you got everyone piling in on you. Really good, strong punch. And then Che Adams, I mean, he's not scoring goals for the team, but at least he's adding some value. He set the winner up at Leicester a few weeks back. He set the winner up here, of course. Brilliant ball. I think initially all of us thought, where the heck, he's just lumped it to some space. And then Stuart Armstrong, I mean, he's taken maybe 12 months really to get up to speed, I think, of playing at Saints and playing at the Premier League. But the last 4 or 5 months, I mean, he's been brilliant. And I think for me, one of the standout players. He's so intelligent on the ball. He gets the ball, he gives it, he runs into space. And as you say, I mean, he's defending that near post for the corner. And then, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds later, he's up the other end of the pitch, sticking the ball in the net, off into the crowd, and all of us can breathe a sigh of relief. So it was a really, really good goal. And I think Pepe Reina's probably made it to about the halfway line. By even now, what are we, Tuesday evening, he's still not even made it back, has he? I don't think so.
I think perhaps it could be far as saying that maybe Stuart Armstrong is now our sort of version of Stephen Davis. Industrious player, gets in amongst it, doesn't do anything fancy, scores a few great goals here and there, and I'm just still waiting for us to inherit or make up a song for Stuart Armstrong.
I would totally agree with you, the Stephen Davis comment, Freddie. I think he's a really intelligent player. He makes the game look so easy. I think that's the thing. And the key thing with him has always been, hasn't it, keeping him fit. He's one of those players that throughout his career has had knocks and niggles and things like that. But, for me, I would imagine that he's one of the first names on Ralph's team sheet when he's fit. Even at home now, he was starting to play him away and then not play him at home. But I think he's realised that in that sort of formation that he wants to play, particularly with Redmond and Boufal out, he's someone that he can rely on. And I mean, it's great to see him get on the score sheet, and it was a wonderful finish to the game.
Yeah, and Tom adds to Che Adams has clear quality, just needs that goal, and I think it would come good given some time. And perhaps it's a little bit like Shane Long, nothing will come by for a long time, and then suddenly it's sort of bursts all over you kind of thing. But I think the goals will come for Che Adams eventually, and I think he's perhaps the long-term replacement for Shane Long. But it is, most importantly though, Ben, 10-point cushion now from the bottom three. How good does that sound? And whilst sort of West Ham retained that gap as they eventually lost to Anfield on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, they put in a pretty good performance out there, didn't they? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I mean, I think the way I look at it, there's 11 games to go. That's 33 points. We're 10 points clear. That means people need to win 4 games now, bearing in mind goal difference probably to catch up with us. So, for teams that have only won 5-6 games all season, it's going to be a tough ask. So we can never get too confident, Freddie. I've supported Saints 30 years. You'll be tens of years as well. If you get too comfortable and confident with Saints, they normally sort of blow it. So I think we just need to, a bit cliche, but take each game as it comes. But we're in a good position now. I think that was maybe the equivalent of a 6-pointer at the weekend, because you lose it and you start dragging yourself back down. You win it like we did and you're starting to look up the league again. So, it was a massive 3 points. It was, as I said, it was all about winning the game, whatever the score was. And I think hopefully now we can go to West Ham with the pressure off. And I mean, we're in a good position. And I think ultimately there's not many games to go now. And I think as long as we keep playing the way we are, the confidence and that sort of thing, then we should be fine.
It's sort of this is the third of our claret trilogy. Firstly, Burnley, then Aston Villa, now West Ham. But what have you made of them this season? That they came so close to being the only side to beat Liverpool this season. But as you say, I think perhaps the pressure will be a little bit off Saints at the weekend. But having said that, West Ham are sort of, if not already in turmoil, they'll be on the brink of a turmoil sort of episode. There's been protests, black balloons in the away ends. They're planning to march from the old Boleyn site. But it's just important for Saints to not be distracted by the off-field antics at the weekend.
Totally. I mean, hopefully it will play into our hands. I wouldn't say I completely dislike West Ham, but they've never been a team that I've really had much fondness for. You watch some games, I don't know, say a Leicester against an Everton, and naturally you'll think, well, I quite like Leicester and I want them to win, or something like that. Whereas with West Ham, even when you remember back to the days when Trevor Brooking took over as manager and they got relegated and that sort of thing, I think there's always been something about them that I've not liked. Of course, it's probably predominantly their owners these day and age, renowned for being pretty dodgy characters to a certain extent. There obviously is a massive rift at the moment between them and the fans. As you said, they were protesting at Liverpool, and I think I read today that they'd only taken a smaller allocation for Liverpool so that there wasn't as much of a protest. It's ridiculous, really, but hopefully it will play into our hands. I mean, I think Saints just need to focus on what they need to do. Ralph's an experienced manager. He'll have them organised, and I think ultimately if we can start the game well, put the pressure on West Ham, potentially score an early goal in the first 15, 20 minutes, the crowd are going to turn, aren't they? They're going to get nasty. The players' minds potentially going to be elsewhere. So because of that win against Villa, I think it is almost a win-win situation for Saints. I think they can go up there and relax and play how they want to play. And we know we're naturally better away from home because teams tend to give us opportunities to counter-attack, don't them? So you look at all of the sort of potential equations there, and it does seem to sort of, align to a potentially good day at the office for Saints.
Yeah, John added earlier that perhaps if Saints get an early goal, bit of early pressure from us, as I say, that the heads could sort of drop their, their attitudes could be poisonous, toxic, that sort of thing. And I think, to be fair, actually, perhaps if we do get that early goal, I think this weekend's fixture could be a very similar episode, if not a repeat episode of the Burnley game from 2 years ago, where they had protests on the pitch. They had a bloke with a corner flag run into the centre circle, fans charging, sort of protesting outside the director's box. It could be a poisonous afternoon for the Hammers.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I think the problem with the West Ham ground is that anyone that wants to run on the pitch probably needs to set off about now, don't they? Because it takes a few days to get there. But I mean, obviously we don't want to see any real violence. We certainly don't want any Saints players to be caught up in any of that. But I mean, we're passionate football fans, aren't we? All of us, we want our club to do well. I mean, even with Saints, we have our moments where challenges with Mr. Gow and things like that, not necessarily to the level with West Ham, but there's a lot of frustration maybe around the Saints fan base about where we're going and what we're trying to do, and maybe some of the fans forums we've had recently with Martin Semmens talking very well has sort of calmed us down. And we know that football fans tend to relax when things are going well on the pitch as well. But yeah, I mean, hopefully it won't be too volatile. I think from a fan wanting to go and watch a good game of football in a nice environment, that's what you want to see. So I think it'll be an interesting day. And yeah, I mean, as that comment said, and as I mentioned, if we can get that early goal, I think it will be really interesting to see the way things go.
Yeah, Sonny also adds that West Ham are a bit of a bogey team these past few seasons. Yeah, I think the last two attempts at the London Stadium, we've lost 3-0 at tail end of last season. Year before that was, in fact, I remember our guest from California came to see his first ever Saints game in the London Stadium. And that afternoon, in fact, despite there being so many protests and sort of murmurs and discontent around the home support, they got their early goals and it sort of settled down from there. But our results recently at the London Stadium have been terrible.
They have. I've done my research, Freddie. In fact, the last 6 meetings between us and West Ham, home and away, we've won 1. They've won 5. Our last 7 matches at West Ham, we've won 2. They've won 5. So it's not been a happy hunting ground. Of course, we know the last couple of seasons we lost 3-0 under Mark Hughes, and then Ralph at the end of last season when Fraser Forster got a rare day out, you'll probably remember. So but of course we remember our first trip to the London Stadium where we absolutely played them off the park under Claude. So we've done well in terms of the last game at Upton Park we won. So they're a good side. For me, they're a good side on paper. I mean, you look at the team last night at Liverpool. They're not a bad side on paper. It's just it seems to be up here at the moment that the problem is with them, whether they want to put the effort in to really help save the club. So it will be a tough game. I think there's no doubt about that. It'll be interesting to see whether they set up with Haller up front and sort of look to maybe one of our weaknesses hasn't been dealing with big physical players up front, so will they do that, or will they stick with someone like an Antonio and look to sort of outpace us? So I think Ralph's got a lot to think about ahead of the game. There's no doubt about that. But as I said earlier, I think from a Saints point of view, if we just play our game, we're full of confidence at the moment. There's no reason we can't win there.
Yeah, Tom also adds that we don't beat West Ham. I hope we can put this right on Saturday. Samuel also adds, not confident about West Ham. They're one of our bogey sides. So I don't know. It's sort of splitting the fan base a little bit in the conversation this evening. To be honest, I'm feeling quietly confident heading to the game on the weekend. We're great away from home, and now that of course we've beaten Aston Villa at home last weekend, West Ham are now currently bottom. I've stolen that statistic from the other shows this weekend. I've done my research, but West Ham could see themselves rooted to the bottom of the home form this weekend.
Yeah, I've been reluctant to make too many jokes about the fact that David Moyes said that winning is what you do when he does when he took back over at West Ham, because of course if we take the mickey too much, they obviously will beat us. But yeah, I mean, the fact they're bottom of the form table, they're right in the middle of a really pretty ugly run of fixtures at the moment as well. I mean, they've had Liverpool, Man City, I think they've got us, and then I think they've got the likes of Chelsea, Tottenham, Everton and Leicester, something like that. So it's not looking great for them. I'd be delighted to see them go down. I think, in terms of the way the owners have run that club, lessons need to be learned sometimes, that you can't just throw money at it. And I think we all know that if they go down, they are going to be in a major financial sort of trouble. But I think they probably will just have enough. I think, Villa look like they're going to struggle. I think West Ham have got a lot of quality in that squad. It just feels that, they need to find the right formula on the pitch. But by the time they come to this end, this run of fixtures, 4 or 5 games time, who knows where they'll be. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to be a West Ham fan at the moment, I don't think.
Yeah, I was looking at the fixtures, and as you say, those their current set, I think perhaps they've just about got over the worst with away to Liverpool and away to Manchester City. But to play Chelsea, obviously Saints coming up this weekend, Tottenham, I think their last 6 games are going to be huge for them. And if they don't pick up points in that period, they can see themselves sort of well and truly adrift. Tom, Mark adds the pressure's all on West Ham this weekend. That should help us.
Totally agree. Can't argue with Mark at all. I think Saints can go out there and relax, and sometimes that's been to our detriment. We do tend to play a bit better when the pressure's on. The pressure was on Saturday, and the pressure was on against Watford at home, Norwich at home, things like that. So it'll be interesting. But I totally agree. I think Saints got to go out there, clear minds, focus on what they need to do. It's all cliche, Freddie, but I think ultimately, if we do that, then we should have enough to beat them.
Right, let's go back to Bailey's comment about 20 minutes ago. So, Smallbone, obviously his first Premier League start last weekend against Aston Villa, but a good opportunity for him, as we've mentioned. But we've got to assume that Walker-Peters is fit and will be returning at the weekend against West Ham. Ward-Prowse will then sort of move to the middle of midfield, and it'd be interesting to see what happens between sort of Mark Noble and James Ward-Prowse. But Will Smallbone, good to see him if he makes the squad again.
Yeah, I mean, again, as you say, I think it'll depend on who's available for Ralph on whether he is in the squad. I would imagine he'll want to try and keep him in the mix and at least keep him involved. I think, Steve made a good point on our pod this weekend in terms of if Walker-Peters does come back, then the experience of Noble, a bit like the experience of sort of Jack Cork and Ashley Westwood with Burnley, is Smallbone just going to get kicked and sort of physically sort of out-battled, whereas Villa obviously gave him a lot of time and space, and it was probably a different experience for him. So I do think you need probably Prowsey back in. Going back to the question, I'm not sure that Ralph will play Smallbone this weekend, but we're obviously previewing this a couple of days before Ralph does his press conference. So we don't know if Walker-Peters is fit yet, do we?
Yeah, lots of comments also adding in about Michael Antonio, of course, scored 10 years ago. Crikey, that makes me feel a little bit old in the JPT final. Antonio just told us at St Mary's. Sonny Adzi would have loved to sign Antonio full-time back in League One. So I think Antonio's probably going to be the man to watch at the weekend. And when he moved to the middle of the park back in the game of December, he was direct, he was strong, he flied past sort of Jack Stevens and our defence that night, and it was a man who got their only goal, who could barely buy a goal right now, Sebastian Haller.
Totally. I mean, the interesting thing about that game, of course, is that whilst I'm sure they'll watch it, Pellegrini, of course, was in charge then, so it is a different manager now. But we know what happened with the Wolves game as well, don't we? Adama Traore was out on the wing. They moved him into the centre for that second half. He absolutely destroyed us by running at our defence. Antonio is very, I used unpredictable earlier. He's an unpredictable player as well. I mean, sometimes he gets the ball, you can't even control it. Other times he gets it, he looks like the best player in the world. So
A bit like Gineppo, right?
Yeah, a bit like Gineppo, yeah. But you're right. I mean, I think that is the fear for Saints, isn't it? That he's someone that has got pace and power. And, we know that Bednarek and Stevens are doing okay back there at the moment, but they don't like physical players running at them. So I'm sure David Moyes, he's been around the game a long time, will be well aware that that's potentially a weapon that he's got in his armoury that Saints should be fearful of, definitely.
Right. Okay. So lots of predictions actually flying in already. Keep them coming, by the way. We'll get to our predictions just shortly. Ralph apparently has opened contract talks this week. Apparently, a 3-year deal is on the table, but he said that he won't be opening talks until we hit sort of 36 points. We're now on the cusp of that, and 40 points has got to be the target. And I think what should be the next step after there?
Yeah, I think the sooner they can get there, the better. Again, going back to sort of supporting Saints over the years, Freddie, they'll probably drag it out to middle of April and then get over the line or something like that. But you and I spoke very first week that Ralph Hasenhüttl took over before that Cardiff away game when Vestergaard made that dodgy back pass and we lost 1-0. You and I spoke about Hasenhüttl then, and we didn't really know what to expect, but. Look, I mean, the guy's done an amazing job for Southampton, bearing in mind the squad that we've got. I thought it was interesting. I was watching the behind-the-scenes clip from the game at Villa on Saturday, and just before the game starts, if you watch Hasenhüttl, he walks out to the touchline and he gives a sort of puff of his cheeks, almost like a nervous puff. You can see what it means to him. That's the way that I sort of thought that he's taking it seriously. There's a lot of chat that the fact that he's bought into the project at Saints. As Adam had mentioned before, Adam Leach, before he left, Saints are doing everything they can to keep Ralph happy. They're giving him whatever he wants, structure in terms of setting up recruitment and things like that. So I think the project is that he knows he's a very powerful position at Saints. None of us want to lose him. We want some consistency. The players have got to know him. I think we were probably all excited about this season, weren't we? But hopefully what we expected for this season might happen next year, providing there is an overhaul in the summer. They need to bring in probably 4, 5, 6 players to really help give him some quality across the team. And if we can do that, the next 3 years could be very exciting, providing it does go to plan.
Yeah, the difficulty that we've got is we're still trying to flog some dead wood. We've got the likes of Lamina, Hoot, Carrillo, all on big money out on loan. I think their price has probably plummeted like a stone. So it'd be difficult to get them off the books.
It will, Freddie, but I think Saints need to take a take a hit on that. If they're, I know it's hard in football to sort of just lose money, but essentially if they're expecting to sell Carrillo for 15 million and get someone to pay his wages, it's not going to happen. They need to probably, in my view, get what they can for these players. I'm not saying give them away, but if we're asking 15 million, sell him for 10 or something like that. Try and come up with a deal that at least brings some money in so we can get these players out, because Saints are a sustainable club. They're making money. We know that. They're not going to go out and spend 30 million on a player. We know that they're going to go out again and spend 15 or 20 million max on someone. So I think for me, they need to probably decide, look, we're not just going to get rid of these players by asking for a premium price for them. Carrillo, Hoyt, Lamina, those sort of players. So let's get what we can that's reasonable and then give it to Ralph to be able to spend on players that he actually wants. Otherwise, we're just going to be carrying them for the rest of their contracts.
Yeah, lots to do. And hopefully Matt Crocker's got his feet well and truly under the table. I think he came in just a bit too late to make a difference in that January transfer window. Managed to get Walker Peters across the line, but still an ongoing process. And Samuel adds, Ralph is doing a great job. Sign him up ASAP. Right, lots of score predictions already flying in. So Wallace has gone 2-0 Saints, Gineppo and Ings on the score sheet. Samuel, different Samuel this time, has gone first. Shea Adams with the first goal, 2-1 Saints. What are the odds on that?
I've no idea, but I think it'd be interesting to sort of see whether I imagine he'll go with Ings and Long, but I think over the next coming weeks, if we can get to 40 points, maybe he will want to take a more of a look at some of the squad players. I've said it a few times over the last few weeks. Saints aren't the sort of club that are just going to bomb players out. Shea Adams hasn't worked out. We'll sell him. They're not like that for 2 reasons. One, they like to give players a chance, and I think that's really commendable and something we should be proud of. They do like to try and help develop these players. The second thing is, he cost a lot of money. I mean, we haven't got 15, 20 million to just throw on someone and then give up. So I think, he will be trying to give as much game time as he can to Adams over the coming weeks. But as you said earlier, Freddie, he obviously wants to get to what he deems a sort of safety mark.
Right, lots more of score predictions. Tom's gone 1-2 to Saints. Sonny's gone 2-2. A little Desmond at the weekend. Love it. Okay, Leo's gone 1-0. Loads of comments here. Bartler's gone 2-2. Mark's gone 3-1, just like Villa away. John has added 3-1. Stewie with a belter. Surely we've got to pick up that song. He scores belters all the time. There's another comment. Harvey's gone 3-1. So lots of positivity in the comments this evening.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? I think you know ultimately the run that we've been on. When you think of that Everton game where we were then to where we are now, I don't think any Saints fan would have predicted it. You know, I know we're used to a roller coaster journey, but fair play to Ralph and the lads. I know we've spoken about it, Freddie. All the guys that are watching will think the same. I mean, the run that they've been on, the job they've done. You know, they've really sort of picked it up and played for the club, and that's what we want to see. So, you know, it's nice that everyone's feeling positive again, and I think the sooner we can get to that, probably the 40 points, I think is going to be enough. You know, then we can relax and hopefully enjoy the last sort of 6 to 8 games of the season.
Yeah. Okay. So before you give me your prediction, I asked you before we came on air, I asked you a trivia question. Actually, now I just want a year for you guys in the comments. When was the last time Saints played on the 29th of February? So have a little think about that whilst you give me your score prediction, Ben. So tell us in the comments, give us a year without Googling it.
Right, I'm just trying to think of the years here as well. Yeah, obviously everyone that knows me knows that I'm very pessimistic when it comes to predictions, Freddie. There's a reason for that, and I said it on our pod, is that I predicted us to draw against Burnley, we lost. I predicted us to draw against Wolves, we lost. I predicted us to lose 2-1 to Villa, we won. So obviously I'm going to stick with that principle purely from my traditional reverse psychology point of view. So I'm going to go for West Ham to win 2-1, obviously.
Oh man, Ben, I don't like the I don't like the sound of that. Have you had a thought about which year it might be?
Right.
Last time we played in the leap year.
So I'm working back from 2020 here. I'm going to guess 2000.
It's not 2000, and nor is it 2004. Samuel and Jamie, not 2004. Now this, I'll give you a clue. It's pre-Premier League era.
Oh, blimey! Right. So let's go 1988.
Too far.
All right.
It's 1992, 28 years ago. Saints last played on the Saturday, the 29th of February. So there you go. There's a statistic.
Who did they play, Freddie?
It was a thrilling 0-0 at Anfield.
Good.
And I would, to be honest, for my score prediction of the week, and I think we can go do what it takes. And as I was, some of the comments have suggested 2-1. I think I'll go with that. I'd like to see Danny Ings on the score sheet once again. I think Gineppo may start. I think it'd be good to see Walker Peters, and hopefully Smallbone plays a part too.
Yeah, totally. I think as long as we get the goals from someone, that's the most important thing. But as you said, it'd be good to see Danny. I mean, Danny's been incredible for us this season. I think he's probably way out in front of the player of the season. But you can't underestimate the performances that, as I say, some of the lads have put in the last few weeks. So I think go out there, enjoy it. The pressure's off. Let's hope that Saints still put in a performance, and for the sort of 3,000 or so travelling Saints fan, that they get a good day out.
Yeah, be sold out support once again, and the Saints fans will be making a lot of noise in that away end, albeit again another reduced allocation, but that's another conversation for another day. Right, so before we sign off, thanks so much, Ben, for joining us, but you've got also a special episode coming up. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so our podcast next week after the West Ham game, actually, we're next Monday. Been very lucky to get a chance to speak to Matt Letizia. So Will from the Saints Archive and myself had a chat to him earlier today. A few questions about some of his favourite goals, some of his favourite memories. We tried not to make it too traditional, because everyone knows Matt's journey, I think. So we tried to go off piste a little bit, which is easier said than done. But yeah, I mean, that'll be in our podcast out next Monday, Freddie. There's about 35 minutes or so with Matt, which was a real privilege. Of course, the greatest player that I've had the chance to watch over my years watching Saints, as I'm sure many of the followers will be as well. So that'll be out on Monday, hopefully alongside a review of the West Ham win.
Excellent. Well, that's I'll be looking forward to that for sure. And I do recommend, actually, if you get the chance, I'd go down to one of his evenings. It's unfiltered, and Matt's got so many stories to tell you. Hopefully, he reveals a few of those in your podcast. You'll have to listen to find out, folks, what sort of anecdotes he's got to say. But Ben, thanks so much. And all of those, the links to the show and the podcast available in the show notes in the description. Ben, thanks for joining us. We'll catch up soon.
Cheers, Freddie. Thanks, mate.
And thank you all for joining us in the comments. We'll catch up with you at the weekend. And thanks for joining us.